I'm going to be speaking on Bill 303, first the pro side and then the con side. Ready? In 3, 2, 1. Affirmative action was a program implemented with the purpose of trying to compensate minorities for racism and discrimination that they experienced in the past. It was trying to help unite our society and to create a more unified society moving forward where there would be no racism and no discrimination. So because this fails on both counts, I urge you to vote on a firm affirmation of this bill with me. For the following two reasons: that first, it actually perpetuates racism, and second, it does not help minority students. On to my first point, that it perpetuates racism. Ronnie Tucker of the University Press of America writes that affirmative action creates a stigma for minority students by leading others, as well as sometimes themselves, to believe that they cannot succeed without assistance. Representatives, the purpose of affirmative action is to help minority students. However, we cannot do that when affirmative action creates the perception in their peers that the only reason they are succeeding is because they are being helped through preferential racial treatment. This actually leads others to view them as inferior because they believe that the only reason for their success is because they have it easier and because they are being helped. Now, whether or not this is true, this is the perception that exists under our constituents, and in some cases even under the minority students themselves. Numerous studies by the New York Times have actually reported that African Americans are becoming increasingly discouraged because of the fact that they believe that society thinks that they will not succeed without help. This is true even in the highest academic circles, where some respected professors are actually questioning their credibility because their peers wonder whether they only got to where they were because of preferential treatment. However, in addition to this, we are also perpetuating racism at its root by grouping everyone together as minorities instead of acknowledging the individual needs of each person. The New York Times on November 4th, 2012, writes that affirmative action groups everybody together under some mythical minority model. In order to truly help the disadvantaged students, we need to have a greater nuance in understanding the different groups within the term minority. Representatives, when we use the word minority student, we are referring to a huge diversity of people, and by doing so, we are grouping them based on one trait alone, and this is how we are identifying them in the affirmative action program. In order to truly help them, we need to use a greater nuance, and we need to understand each individual needs instead of catering to the needs all based on one trait. But on to my second point, that this doesn't help them in the first place. Gail Hurst, a professor of law at University of San Diego, writes that in selective schools with racial preferential treatment, a majority of African American students end up at the lower half, discouraging them, harming their self-confidence, and ultimately discouraging them from pursuing their interests. As a result, their counterparts at non-elite students are actually more likely to succeed. What this means is because they are ill-equipped to actually compete at the level that they are being put because of these preferential programs, it's actually harming them in the long run, and people who are not being placed under these programs are actually succeeding more. So because affirmative action actually perpetuates racism and does not help the students it aims to, I urge you to vote pro with me. Okay. Now for 2 minutes of questioning. For this, I'm going to raise this hand as the questioner and this hand when I'm speaking as the speaker. Ready? In 3, 2, 1. So, Representative, you talked about how this actually perpetuates racism, right? But if there are no because it harms their credibility and people wonder if they only got there because of preferential treatment. But if they aren't present at all in a university, won't that actually create an even worse stigma because of the fact that they're not there at all and they're not being unrepresentative? Representatives, you make the mistake of assuming that they wouldn't be there in the first place if it weren't because of the preferential treatment. What I'm simply saying is that they are smart enough to get in. However, because of the preferential treatment, it creates the question in the minds of other representatives and their peers as to whether or not they deserve to be there. This means that even the most intelligent African Americans who are definitely competitive and didn't need preferential treatment in the first place are actually going to be harmed because their credibility is going to be called into question. When they compete at this level. But also representative, there's the fact that a majority of the students who actually succeed when placed in competitive schools, would have done so without preferential action. What this means is that the most talented and those who are actually equipped to compete at the level are being harmed in their ability to compete there because of the fact of this preferential treatment. Okay, Representative, let's move on to your second point where you talk about it not helping them. But isn't the fact that you say that they don't succeed in these schools, but isn't the very fact that they're exposed to this higher level of education going to help them even if they're eventually forced to move down to a different university? Representatives, the issue with that is that even if this is true, what we're seeing is that it's discouraging them, as actually the students who do not go to more competitive universities are being more successful in the future. What this means is that affirmative action isn't actually helping to raise the status of minorities in society as is its purpose. Thank you, that's time. Okay, now on to the con speech. A bill to level the playing field. I just thought this was ironic because the purpose of affirmative action in the first place is to level the playing field from where it was initially started when minorities were discriminated against in the past. So representatives, as a Congress, it is your obligation to create a level playing field for your constituents. So unless you believe that equal opportunity is present for every single racial group and every single minority group, you cannot vote with this bill. So for the following two reasons: that first, the playing field is not level in the education or the workplace. Let's move on to my first point of education. The National Center for Educational Statistics in 2007 found that minority students are 28% more likely to attend high-poverty schools. As a result, the American Psychological Association writes that even high-achieving students have lower expectations from the teachers and fewer pre-college educational opportunities. What this means is that even the most high-achieving of minority students are not going to have the same opportunities as white students and more affluent students because of the fact that they're attending lower schools with less money and less resources. What this means is that a minority student might have the potential and the ability to compete at the same level as the most elite colleges in the country, but they will not get in based on the standards of admission because of the fact that they didn't have the opportunities to pursue programs which would lead them to meet those standards. The New York University furthers that affirmative action has the purpose of helping to frame the progress of minority individuals in the context of obstacles they face. What this means is that by instituting an affirmative action program, we're able to put minority students where they deserve to be because of the fact that we are saying it's okay. We are acknowledging the fact that they faced this adversity in the past and saying that moving forward, we are going to help alleviate this university by giving you the opportunities you would have had if you didn't have to deal with this in the first place. But let's move on to my second point, that it doesn't exist in the workplace either. The American Psychological Association in 2008 writes that unemployment for African Americans and other ethnic minorities are almost twice as high as Caucasian Americans. In addition, African American males working full-time earn only 72% of the average Caucasian male and 85% of the average Caucasian female. In addition, Santa Clara University writes that preferential policies help to reduce poverty among minorities and its associated social costs. Remember the associated social costs, because that is what ultimately perpetuates the cycle of poverty and keeps minorities feeling inferior. However, preferential treatment through affirmative action is able to prevent this. So because of the fact that that the playing field is not level in education or the workplace, I urge you to vote con with me. Okay, now for 2 straight minutes of questioning. So I think I get my timer working. Okay, again, I'm going to raise this hand when I'm the questioner, this hand when I'm the speaker. Wait. Okay. In 3, 2, 1. So, Representative, you said that education isn't equal in the workplace. Are you saying that minority students are inferior and that they can't succeed without these policies? No, Representative. What I'm saying is that they face a much more adverse system. system. Statistically, as I stated in my speech, they're 28% more likely to attend a high-poverty school. What this means is that they're not exposed to the same opportunities as privileged Caucasian students. The result is that they're less likely to get into the college, not because of any deficit in their ability, but because of a deficit in the opportunities they had preceding their application to the college. Okay, Representative, but you also talked about how you also talked about in your contention too about how their unemployment rate is lower. Why is this, Representative? The reason for this is because of the fact that they're not exposed to the same level of education. Because of their disadvantaged beginnings, in a lower poverty high school, they're unable to get into a better college, and as a result, they're unable to get a better job. Affirmative action solves this problem, but at the root of college. That's exactly what I'm asking, Representative. If we're able to solve this problem when they're coming into college, and they come out of college with a good education, why do we need further affirmative action in the workplace? Why do we need further affirmative action when entering the workplace if they are not equal educationally? The reason for that, Representatives, is because of the fact that this is not going to happen overnight. Not every minority not every minority individual is going to get the quality college education they need right away. When that happens, obviously we'll be able to get rid of affirmative action altogether. But in the status quo, there are still going to be many minority students who do not get a college education and who need that affirmative action in the workplace in order to get in. If they need the affirmative action to get in the first place, doesn't that mean that they're not going to succeed in the workplace and ultimately either being fired or lead to a more unproductive economy? No, Representative. The reason for that is because when they spend enough time in the workplace, they're going to be able to succeed simply but through immersion. Studies show that 76% of people are able to learn through immersion if they are surrounded by people who know what they're doing and do it over and over again simply through habit. And that's overtime. Whoops. Okay. Yeah, thanks for watching.